Hyundai's high-performance N division may be new, but the company has been busy building some pretty world-class vehicles. They started out a few years ago by introducing something like this, the Elantra N. It's been terrorizing the streets as a follow-up to the Veloster N against vehicles like the Civic Type R and Volkswagen GTI. Around a year and a half ago, they introduced this vehicle, and essentially an electric hot hatch, the Ioniq 5N, offering over 600 horsepower and the kind of performance that you might associate with a supercar. However, as the N division continues to grow and get more recognition, Hyundai is following up with another model, and this time it's actually going to be another fast four-door. And what you're looking at is essentially the most powerful production four-door ever with the introduction of this vehicle from Hyundai. This is the Ioniq 6N. As you guys know, the Ioniq 6 is a four-door version basically of the Ioniq 5 riding on the eGMP architecture, and with over 600 horsepower under the hood with dual motor all-wheel drive, this is essentially Hyundai's answer to something like the Tesla Model 3 performance. So today we're actually out here in Irvine, California at their design studio because we're finally able to see the production version for the US in the sheet metal. So now that we're doing so, let's go ahead and take a detailed first look. So Hyundai has been teasing a higher performance version of the Ioniq 6 for nearly a couple years now, and to finally see the production version with the refreshed front end, I have to say the design has a lot to unpack here. Before we start talking about the look of this vehicle, let me first start by showing you what's going on underneath the hood, because the regular Ioniq 6 does have a front trunk storage space, but as you can see for the N model, they actually do remove the front trunk storage space, and that's because this vehicle has upgraded motors. It's essentially the same dual motor setup that you find in the Ioniq 5N. So this vehicle draws its power from a larger 84 kilowatt hour battery pack. We don't have the final range figures yet, but we do know the power figures. So Hyundai says all the time you'll get up to 601 horsepower and 568 pound-feet of torque. However, when you use the N-Grin boost function or the launch control function, it raises the power temporarily to 641 horsepower, which is a significant upgrade versus the 320 horsepower that you get in the standard dual motor all-wheel drive version. It essentially has twice the horsepower and basically twice the torque. So this is a big boost in performance. Now it all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission with electronic all-wheel drive, and Hyundai claims this model should be good for 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, which I suspect is conservative because the last Ioniq 5N that we tested did 0 to 60 in 3.06 seconds. So this model should be faster because it's a little bit lighter. Its top speed is around 160 miles an hour. So again, pretty serious performance. It shows that Hyundai is kind of going after the Tesla Model 3 performance as well. And while we don't have the range figures, we do know the Ioniq 5N offers around 221 miles of range. Hyundai basically said expect this model to offer more. If I had to estimate myself, I would say between 235 to maybe 240 miles of range. The base all-wheel drive version will do around 270 miles of range. This vehicle still runs on the eGMP architecture. It's at 800 volts, which means it does allow for relatively good fast charging. Curb weight, we don't have that final figure, but they did say it's around 100 pounds lighter than the Ioniq 5N, and that model is just under 5,000 pounds. But let's go ahead and close up the hood here and talk about the exterior styling, because as you guys know, the company gave the Ioniq 6 a pretty big refresh for 2026. So it's starting off, of course, with the N. This particular color is the glossy white exterior with the pearl effect, and you can see it has a new front fascia. So as opposed to those headlights that were one piece, now they've gone to that kind of divorced look, which is very trendy. You have a signature LED daytime running light here, which also functions as the turn signal. And you can also see the headlights for this model. They have that projector separate look where you have the LED low and high beam. No fog lights on the vehicle, but you do have some functional air intake openings along with some active grille shutters. You can see the front splitter also has that signature orange line that kind of goes across the entire vehicle, and it also has the N logo here in the actual front grille. Full 360 camera system along with well-integrated parking sensors and this kind of blacked out look for the Hyundai logo. But overall, it certainly is polarizing. Hyundai says they're going to offer this car in 4 different colors, either white, black, a matte gray, or their performance blue, which has a new pearl effect to it. On the white exterior color, it really is polarizing when you see the kind of two-tone combination. Now, as you move around the side profile, remember this is a 4-door sedan, but also is a little controversial because of that teardrop shape. I personally think it looks really cool. Some people either love or hate it. But I have to say, it certainly looks unique, and it kind of shows you that Hyundai is still willing to push the envelope in terms of the design. In terms of the overall length, Hyundai did make this car a little bit larger. It's also around 2.5 inches wider than the standard Ioniq 5 or Ioniq 6, and that's because it's got wider fenders, bigger wheels. It's also around 194 inches long, so it's around 3 inches longer overall, and that's mostly in the front and rear extensions for the front and rear bumpers to give it that more aggressive look. You can see the wheels. These are the standard wheels for the N. They're a 20-inch forged alloy wheel, so these are technically technically an inch smaller versus the 21s that you find in the Ioniq 5N. You can see, I love the way the wheels look with that double 5-spoke design. It does have some aerodynamic covers here because it's an EV still. It's riding on a 275 by 35 R20 Pirelli P0 summer performance tire. Now, Hyundai says that these are still kind of an EV-oriented tire for range improvements, of course. And then you can see the brakes, massive upgrade. They're a 15.7-inch rotor at the front, clamped down by a 4-piston orangey red painted caliper. The rears are going to be around just under 14 inches, so a little bit smaller, but these are essentially the same brakes on the Ioniq 5N, which look even larger on the slightly smaller 20-inch wheel. The suspension has also been completely redone, tuned, of course, by their N division to give you better handling, a stiffer suspension setup, less body roll, but it also does include adaptive dampers. So again, it's got all the usual performance upgrades that you expect. Now, as you can see, there's more of that orange line that goes across the side skirt, along with that kind of black accent there, which Hyundai says they put that lower black accented cladding that kind of, I guess, make the vehicle appear a little bit thinner or a little bit less bulbous, but I personally would love to see it with a full paint finish. You can see the mirrors, they're black painted. They include integrated turn signals and a full 360 camera. There's no chrome along the window trim, it's just kind of gloss black. And then just like the Ioniq 5N, there is no sunroof. Now, Hyundai basically says this is a dedicated track car, so obviously they're not putting a sunroof on this vehicle to kind of increase the structural rigidity and give you more headroom. Follow me over to the rear. This is probably the most controversial angle of the back. But as you can see, if you guys really love contrast, you're gonna really appreciate this because first of all, this wing back here is exclusive to the N model. It does add functional downforce, but at the same time, Hyundai wanted to kind of maintain the aerodynamics, because that's important with an EV, and you kind of have to fight the two when you're adding a wing back here. Hyundai says the drag coefficient is 0.27 on this model, so it's not that much more versus the 0.22. And they also said at basically at its top speed, this can add up to 220 pounds of functional downforce. This is going to help press the vehicle down onto the track. And I also think the wing looks pretty tasteful. What I don't necessarily love is this all black area here with that kind of contrast with the white. First of all, you can see the taillights have been updated. Instead of having that full light bar, Hyundai's kind of gone with the parametric pixels with additional 4 dots kind of into the actual trunk lid area. It has Ioniq 6 spelled out back there along with the N badge. And then you can see the rear diffuser has some more of the parametric pixels, and it just looks far more aggressive along with the integrated rear parking sensors. I would love to see Hyundai do like a full paint finish, but again, if you don't like this contrast, you can just get the black exterior color, which is probably going to look really sinister. They also offer a matte gray, which I think the gray could probably be the nice compromise between that. I also do want to see it in the performance blue, but the white would probably be my least favorite personally. In terms of the cargo area, as you can see, you have a power opening trunk lid area, and this is kind of where the Ioniq 6 is obviously not going to be as practical as the Ioniq 5, but you do get around 11.5 cubic feet of storage space, so that hasn't really changed. If you look underneath here, there's still a little bit of an underfloor storage area, which is nice. You can see the vehicle does come with an NACS and CCS combo adapter, which we'll talk about in just a moment. You can see the trunk still gives you the ability to fold down 60/40 along with the structural bracing, so that again improves the handling dynamics and the structural rigidity. And if you want to follow me over here, this is where you're going to find the charge port door for the vehicle. And as you can see with the update, Hyundai has now adopted the NACS port, so the J3400 plug. This vehicle still runs on the 800 volt architecture. It can accept up to, I think, 270 kilowatts, so you can go from 10 to 80% in just under 20 minutes with an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. So whenever we get the final range figures, this vehicle should be, still a great road trip car, but just keep in mind, it's definitely not going to have the range that you expect from the base Ioniq 6, but still, this will have more actual range versus its sibling, the Ioniq 5N. Now moving on to the interior of the Ioniq 6N, just like on the exterior, Hyundai has made some pretty big changes here, but it's also pretty familiar if you guys have been inside the sibling of this car, the Ioniq 5N. Now first of all, I hope you guys like a black interior because this is your only interior color combination. It has these upgraded sport bucket seats, which have little holes here if you want to use like a racing harness. You also have this illuminated N logo because remember, Hyundai's boss, or the boss of the N division, Albert Biermann, came from BMW, so you're going to see some of those cues there that you might find in a BMW product. These seats are also really aggressively bolstered, and they have a combination of a leatherette material with the suede Alcantara. I also like the performance blue contrast stitching, and you also have the same thing on the seat belts, which is kind of a nod again to the original N model, the Veloster N. These seats are unfortunately manually adjustable. They have to save weight and cut costs somewhere, but they are heated and ventilated, which is a nice touch, especially the ventilation portion with the black interior. I really appreciate how Hyundai carried that over from the Ioniq 5N. Now stepping inside, you definitely have a pretty low step-in height, which it feels much lower than the 5N because the 5N is supposed to be like a hot hatch or something a little bit taller. As I get in and shut the door, you can see The door has a really solid sounding thunk. The eGMP architecture is a great platform. It's one of the best EV architectures you're going to find currently in the business. Now, looking at the key fob, you can see this is the current key fob that all the Ioniq 6s look. You can see for the N, it has a couple of upgrades. It's all black for one, which I appreciate over the silver. If you rotate it on its side, it actually reveals the H logo there with your typical buttons here for lock, remote start, unlock, panic functionality. I also like how it's all black as opposed to the gray, because the gray, I've seen the color kind of fade after just like less than a year of usage. But once you get inside, you can see the start stop button is right here on the lower portion of the dash. Push that, you can see it has the typical starter chime noise that all the Hyundais have. And what you're hearing there is a fake idle sound. And that's because just like in the Ioniq 5N, this creates like a fake noise if you guys put it into specific modes. So for example, I'm in the N mode now. It's a little lame when you're actually just sitting here revving the car out, but again, it's kind of a cool feature, especially if you guys enjoy that synthetic video game feel, which eventually will drive this vehicle. But in case you're wondering how it sounds in real life, you can watch our full review on the Ioniq 5N. Now, in terms of the rest of this interior, you can see there are a couple of changes, so let's go ahead and talk about that. First of all, the door panel has this kind of rubberized material on the upper panel that's a soft touch injection molded plastic. You have this kind of ripple effect here on this lower portion of the door handle. There's also ambient lighting in here at night that kind of creates a cool little effect. The door handles, you can see, are just a gray painted plastic. They have this like rubberized texture behind the door panel or the door handle as well. You can see there's a big area here where you can put a smartphone, functions as a grab handle as well. There's also a big speaker for the Bose premium sound system. And then on the lower portion, it's just hard touch plastic. It actually feels a little cheap and slippery. I also don't love how it's a slightly different color than the rest of the door panel itself. You can see the steering wheel. This is the same N-specific steering wheel that you get in the Ioniq 5N. I like how it's a nice thick rim. It's not a flat bottom design, but you have perforated leather on the 10 and 3 grip, along with lots of buttons. First of all, there are paddles here to control the actual gears and the shifting. Hyundai says they've expanded the availability of the paddles into other drive modes besides the N mode. So that was a request that they had from owners of the Ioniq 5N. And you have a lot of buttons here where you can adjust your drive mode, of course, for the vehicle. There's the NGB button, which gives you the extra 10 seconds of overboost where you can get the full 640 horsepower. And then there's also dedicated N buttons here for custom. And it actually, when you put it into this mode here, the most aggressive mode, it has the pops and crackles, which again, it's creating that sound from the speakers inside the car, but it also has the sound from outside, but only at higher speeds. Now, the steering wheel itself also has a manual tilt telescoping adjustment, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. I can get a comfortable driving position pretty well in this car for the most part. And then your gear selector is right here. As you can see, when I put the vehicle into reverse, there's your full 360 camera, which allows you to do a full 360 perimeter scan around the car. It even shows you the correct color of the car. It matches what you actually have. So again, this is a really great feature, really high quality resolution. And as you can see, just like other Ioniq 6Ns or Ioniq 6s, you have dual 12.3-inch displays with their newer CNCC software. So it finally has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can see it's a pretty good size. I appreciate how it's not overwhelming in terms of screens, but again, you have kind of the combination of the two screens that kind of make it look like one screen. The other feature that this car has that the Ioniq 5 doesn't have is actually a head-up display. So I really like the addition of the head-up display. You can see when you have it in sport mode there, you can actually see there's a digital tachometer there. So it kind of mimics what you see in the actual instrument panel behind you. I don't necessarily think you need it because this is kind of right in your line of sight, but it's a nice upscale touch that the 6 has over the 5N, for example. Now, looking at the dashboard, you can see there's a soft touch injection molded plastic with that kind of rubberized feel to it. You have these traditional air vents where you can kind of use these little tabs to manipulate the airflow. There's also ambient lighting there where you can actually change that color, along with this kind of interesting black painted plastic look, which tries to make it look like it almost has like an aluminum look and feel to it. There's these kind of like wingettes that you see on the dash, and that's because in other markets, Hyundai offers the side view camera mirrors, which are not legal here in the US. So this is kind of a remnants of that feature in other markets. You can see the center console has been slightly updated. You do have your heated and cooled seat controls here, which is actually a dedicated button, which is an upgrade versus the 5N, which puts those seat controls in the actual screen. You have separate climate control buttons here for the dual zone temperature control. These are touch sensitive buttons, but I appreciate how there's a volume knob and a tuning knob along with some actual buttons. You have two USB-C charging ports there. They're the quick charging variety. And you can see my smartphone fits there. My 16 Pro Max fits there perfectly. for the wireless charging pad. Your window controls on the 6 are still located here in the center console, which takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, it's, you know, they're one touch for the front windows, not for the rear. You have cup holders here, along with some pretty big open storage areas down here for additional storage. And then you can see this is a slightly padded center console armrest. If I open that up, it's actually relatively deep as well. We can get some more covered storage over there, which is nice. Above me, the headroom space is good if you guys plan to use this as a track vehicle. Plenty of headroom space, and these seats also really hug you in place nicely. So if you guys are of wider frame, these are going to be a little bit confining, but at the same time, once you're in the seats, they really hold you in place very well. And you can see the glove box, it goes into the dash. It's damped, but not lined with felt. So there's pretty good storage in this vehicle, despite the fact that it's, you know, a sedan. It's not going to be as practical, obviously, as the Ioniq 5N. But the only thing I wish Hyundai would offer is a sunroof. But again, I understand why they're getting rid of a sunroof. There's no digital camera rearview mirror. Instead, you just kind of have a frameless design along with your LED map lighting as well. So overall, the interior is still a really nice place to spend time. You finally get that low sports sedan feel as opposed to the 5, which feels like you're sitting in like a tall hot hatch. But I think a lot of people are going to be impressed with the overall interior package. I just want them to offer another interior color versus this all black interior. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area. I can show you guys what that space is like. Now, as you can see, even though this is a sedan, Hyundai offers a pretty generous amount of space back here. First of all, when I get in, you can see the legroom is pretty plentiful. You have a completely flat floor back here, kind of owing to its all-electric architecture that's EV. Hyundai says you have around just under 35 inches of legroom back here, which is pretty usable. Obviously, if you need more space, the 5N is going to offer even more space. But for somebody my height, this is essentially my driving position. I can easily stretch out back here, get comfortable. I can cross my legs. Material quality, you can see, is the same soft touch from the front area. It's even padded down here, and you can see this area. Hyundai said that they designed the rear seat to almost be like a lounge where you can kind of lean up against this, which kind of carries over into the N model. There's some cheaper plastic down here with some additional storage. No actual storage pockets in each of the seats, but you do have rear seat air vents. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, a little bit of storage here. No heated seats back here, but you do have an armrest that folds down, gives you 2 cup holders. The Alcantara material carries over, which is good because this kind of helps to grip you if you have passengers back here that, you know, that's riding with you when you're on the track. Headroom space, as you can see with the teardrop shape, is not too bad, but at 5'7", my hair is grazing the roof when I lean back. So remember, if you guys are looking for more space with this powertrain setup, the company will happily sell you the 5, but this is definitely going to be the more serious driver's car. And I have to say, they've kept the interior relatively practical considering the fact that it's a sedan. Now, around a year and a half ago, when I first had a chance to drive the Ioniq 5N, I proclaimed it to be one of the best driving and best handling EVs that I ever tested. And it was also really interesting because it was essentially coming from a vehicle that was supposed to be an SUV. I basically called it an electric hot hatch. After seeing its sibling vehicle, the Ioniq 6N, this is basically taking everything that you liked from the Ioniq 5 and giving you a sleeker sports sedan body. Because as you guys saw, 641 horsepower when you have it in its NGB mode really makes this thing incredibly powerful. This is basically Hyundai's answer to the Tesla Model 3 Performance, and I'm super excited to finally get behind the wheel at some point next year, because if you guys are looking to get your hands on the Ioniq 6N, you're gonna have to wait until Q1 of 2026, so a couple more months, and Hyundai sadly wasn't quite ready to talk about pricing of the vehicle just yet. But let's go ahead and try to speculate, because the 2025 Ioniq 6 starts at around $37,000. You guys may have heard that Hyundai significantly reduced the price of the Ioniq 5 recently to just under $35,000, so I suspect whenever they have final pricing of the 2026 model, they're also going to reduce the price of this car, because the 6 has technically always been a little bit less expensive versus the 5. Now, a current Ioniq 5N, a 2025 model, starts at around $66,000. So if I had to speculate, I would assume that this model, when it goes on sale early next year, should also be a little bit cheaper. Remember, the performance bogey is that Model 3, which you can basically get the performance model for around $55,000, which kind of leads me to think that I don't think Hyundai is going to be able to match that price for the Tesla. But if they can get the price of this vehicle to maybe just under $60,000, we could be looking at a relatively good deal here, because while we don't know the pricing of the 5N for 2026, I suspect they're also going to reduce that here. But what we have here is a car that's the most powerful production four-wheeler that Hyundai's ever done. It'll do 0 to 60 in the low 3-second range, and it also has a design, whether you love it or hate it, is really going to be shocking, and it's going to get a lot of attention when you start seeing these vehicles out on the road. Well, all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my very detailed overview on the 2026 Hyundai Ioniq 6N. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.